Hi, this is Rob Chappell, Executive Editor of Madison365, with your daily update for February 2nd, Groundhog Day. And doesn't it feel like the movie sometimes? Like, yeah, it's been kind of the same day for a long time now. Today we have a lot of local news that we'll get to after we do the COVID numbers. We'll do COVID numbers, short pause, and then we'll get into some other news. We've got an update on the story I brought you yesterday. I brought you the story yesterday, just kind of as it was still developing, like it had just been out for a little bit. That a Sun Prairie middle school teacher asked students, how would you punish a slave that was being disrespectful? Obviously, an inappropriate question to ask a sixth grader. But I was able to talk to some more people, including a parent, after the update yesterday. So I'll have some updates on that. Also, we have a new police chief here in Madison, and there was a sort of a welcome event for him, and he said some things that were a little surprising, and we'll get into that. But for right now, let's talk COVID. So drop your questions in the comments if you have any. A couple things on numbers, and then one or two other like policy types of things. The numbers today don't look great, but they're not bad. Like nothing's going really wrong. What doesn't look great today is the lowest number of tests in a long time. On a Tuesday, that's weird, right? You expect to see that on Sunday and Monday when they're not processing as many tests over the weekend. But today they have only 3,182 new test results available. It doesn't feel like a lot. The other problem is of those 3,100 tests, 1,095 were positive. So 1 out of 3, basically, of those new tests were positive. That's not great. That's a 34% positive rate for the day. Now, it's not great, but it's not reason to panic because that number is just such a weird number. That's like tests that have from the past 3 or 4 days, right? So don't and there's a bunch of negative repeat tests that have been done in the past 3 or 4 days that aren't included in that. So don't put too much stock in that 34% number. Just when you see fewer tests, you want to see fewer cases. That's just kind of how it is. So I don't love that number, but the positive test rate for the 7 days is still okay. 19.7% of the people who've been tested in the past 7 days tested positive. That's pretty consistent over the past week. That is slightly higher than yesterday, but just barely. Like yesterday was 19.5, today 19.7. I'm not concerned about that. That's been hovering sort of, around 19.5 for the past 7 days. Okay. We'd love to see that start to go down, but at least it's not going up considerably. The other number that's more important that is frankly better news today is the 7-day rate of all tests, which yesterday was 5.4. And I told you yesterday that was a problem because that number, this is the percentage of all tests in the past 7 days that came back positive, right? Including all the tests where everybody who's tested like every day, like healthcare workers and stuff. That number has been going down steadily for 6 weeks, maybe more, almost 2 months now. It's been going down every day almost. Yesterday was the first day it went up for a while. It went up from 5.2 to 5.4. I said yesterday that's not a big problem unless it keeps going up. And today it went back down to 5.1, which is the lowest it's been since they've been reporting it. So that's good news, right? So of those, even though the new tests that reported today are like 1/3 positive, when you spread those out and actually put them on the day that they actually were processed, that percentage goes down to 5.1. So that's good. That's the number. That's the kind of the key number for me. We want to get that one down below 3. And we're almost there. And we got to keep doing what we're doing, distancing, masking, all that stuff, to push that number down below 3. So good work, everybody. Excuse me. Also today, we are reporting 40 fatalities, which is a lot. We don't like that, but that number is lower than it has been on the last several Tuesdays. As I mentioned before, the same thing with fatality reporting as with test reporting. We just don't report as many on the weekends. And so Tuesday, Wednesday are the days you catch up on certifying death certificates. This is not 40 deaths that happened today. This is 40 deaths that have happened in the past month or so that have just today been certified as COVID-19. Now, again, that usually in the past several Tuesdays, that's been between like 50 and 80. So to be at 40, still a lot of people, but it's on a downward trend. Our 7-day average now for deaths is 26.3, which is the lowest it's been for a while. Right? That was over 60 at one point in November. The one problem I see with the deaths today is that one of the people who certified, who was confirmed to have died from COVID, was in their 30s, and 2 were in their 40s. So most of the deaths are still over 70. It doesn't make it okay, right? But that's just been the trend. So anytime you see an anomaly from the trend, it's cause for concern, right? So anyway, that's just something we noted today that doesn't look good. Vaccinations are catching up a little bit, starting to accelerate again. We have 108,713 people in Wisconsin who have completed their vaccinations. That is 2.7% of the adult population in Wisconsin. Okay. Add to that, probably 10% or so who have probably at least some limited immunity because they've been infected before. You get to about 13, 14%, something like that. We need to get that to 80, right? So we got a ways to go, but that's 7,000 more who've completed their vaccine since yesterday. So if we can keep that number, if we can keep doing like 7,000, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 every day, we'll get there. We're currently at 568,800 total doses that have been given, which means there are about 300,000 people. That's a good number. 300,000 people who've gotten the first shot and are just waiting on the second. Okay, so we're going to get there. I will also say Dane County still leads the way in terms of number of vaccine doses given. We're just under 75,000. Milwaukee County's catching up, 73,115. Now, there's 2 things I want to say about vaccines from a policy perspective that don't have anything to do with the numbers. Number one, you might have heard that some national news organizations, CNN and some others have been reporting that there's racial disparity in vaccines, which should surprise no one, right? That we know COVID-19 hit communities of color harder than it hit other communities, than white communities. People of color were more likely to get the virus, and then once they got it, more likely to die from it. And now communities of color are less likely to be vaccinated, which is just sort of, that's America. So the problem is we don't know in Wisconsin if that's true or not. The fact that Dane County is getting a lot, was early on getting a lot more vaccines than Milwaukee County tells me it probably is. We are probably experiencing disparities here in Dane County or in Wisconsin. The fact that mostly white Dane County was well ahead of mostly not white Milwaukee County should tell you something. So I've been bothering our health authorities at the state and the county level. And I heard back today that Dane County is going to start reporting race and ethnicity data of those who've gotten vaccinated next week. So we'll have at least that. I also heard from the state today, the State Department of Health Services, that they do plan to begin reporting that data, but they're not sure when yet. So if they haven't started by next week, I will continue to bother them. That's one of the chief sort of skills of a reporter, is to continue bothering people until you get the answer to the question you wanted. So I will be persistent in doing that because it's really important. It is really important to know whether or not there's a racial disparity in vaccinations. And then if there is, assuming there probably is, just for many, is access to health insurance, access to information, just ability to take a half day off of work and stand in line. Just those things favor people with privileges, right? Ability to make it to 2 appointments when you have kids and work and school and everything. Those things are just, it's just so much easier when you have a certain amount of privilege. So we're going to keep an eye on that. We're going to report it, and we're going to see what has to be done to make sure that it's equitable at some point. And we'll see. Maybe Wisconsin's doing better than the rest of the country. I don't know. We'll find out next week, I hope. Then the other thing I'll mention is something that popped up just today, that the federal government is going to set up 100 vaccination sites. I don't know a lot about this. I just saw it sort of popped up on my news feed earlier today. But apparently they're going to be run and administered and supplied and staffed by the federal government. It's going to be 100 of them around the country. And we have asked, we being the state of Wisconsin, Governor Evers has asked that the Atlanta Energy Center be one of them. Obviously that would favor Dane County, obviously. Maybe State Fair Park, where the alternative care facility is, would be a better place for that. I don't know. Just my thought. But that application has been submitted, and we will see. We'll see what happens with that. Okay, that's what I have for COVID. We're going to take a short break. Give me 40 seconds. I'll be back. Don't scroll away. I have a new kind of little ad for you that you might appreciate. Oh wow. This I gotta pop this up, Margie. Yeah. The appointment represents the combined efforts of 3 over 4 adult children. Like, it shouldn't be this hard, right? I mean, even though you were able to get it done and recognizing that you have the privilege to be able to work to do that, it shouldn't be that hard. I also tweeted the other day, I have 2 adult children who have not done anything to get me the vaccine. So your mom is lucky. My children aren't that old. I just thought that was funny. I see people tweeting all day long about how they're so excited for their parents to get the vaccine, and my kids have not tweeted that once. I don't know what's wrong with them. Anyway, stay with us. We'll have that update on Sun Prairie. You'll want to hear this. It's like eye-rolling, induced, whatever. But we'll be right back. Stay with us. Be right back right after this. So if you didn't know, we have job ads. We do. Madison365.org/jobs. There's always a handful of active listings there if you're looking for work, as a lot of people are. Also, if you're looking for people, it's $50 a week. to list an ad, and we get that this our very specific audience. If you want to be, diverse in your employment, we're the place. Okay, let's get to the news here. In Sun Prairie, as you are probably aware, if you've been paying attention, if you've been watching yesterday, or if you've been watching our social feed, Sun Prairie, a sixth grader, or several sixth graders, got this as their assignment. Now, the idea here is they're listing out a number of scenarios that would be covered by Hammurabi's code, which is one of the first, the first civilization's legal codes back, in ancient basically prehistoric times. Not quite prehistoric, but very ancient times. One of the first sort of codes of behavior, right? So there's questions about if somebody breaks into a house, what would Hammurabi's code do? What would you do? And one of the questions was this: slave has disrespected his master by telling you are not my master. How will you punish this slave? Now, this is problematic for several reasons, and we talked about yesterday. We talked about on the podcast this morning. But just to recap, if you're if you're curious, first of all, this assumes that a slave telling a master, "You are not my master. I am an independent human being." Like, this assumes that was that's an unreasonable thing to say, first of all, and that slave, it assumes that slave deserves punishment. But also, it puts a sixth grader in the mindset of a slave owner. So if you're a black kid, this is about ancient Mesopotamian slaves. Okay, fine. That's not a distinction a sixth grade black kid is going to make. This black kid is going to be thinking slaves. This black kid is going to be thinking like, these are my ancestors I'm talking to. It's a problem. Not only that, but he's going to be thinking like, my classmates might be thinking about me doing this. So obviously it's a problem. The teachers have been placed on administrative leave. The school district has issued an apology, has promised to work with black community leaders to, I don't know what exactly. They haven't said yet, and I emailed this question, but they haven't said yet whether they're going to pay those black community leaders. This is one significantly problematic thing that happens, is that something like this will happen, or there'll be a teacher will use a racial slur, or there'll be a question like this that's, there was a statistics exam at UW a couple years ago that used something about the math problem was about immigrants jumping over the wall, right? So something like that happens all the time. And then the institution, the school, will say like that they're going to work with community leaders to either make it right or to become educated or whatever. But usually what happens is they'll get one person who will have a meeting or a listening session and then like stand next to them at a press conference. So you got like the white superintendent talking with the black community leader standing next to him, going. And that black community leader has volunteered their time and their experience and their expertise, probably for very little reason, because the white people probably aren't really listening that much. So I'm hoping that the Sun Prairie School District actually decides to invest and pay some black people, not just any black people, but people who do this work. Like, there are lots of people who do this work. A lot of people here in Madison who do this work, who could and should be paid for their expertise and their experience. So I hope that happens. Sarah asks, how many teachers? I don't know. That's another question that I asked them that I haven't had a response to yet. And we know it's multiple teachers or on paid administrative leave, but we don't know how many exactly yet. Now, a couple other things I'll mention about this. First of all, I spoke when I got done with the update yesterday. I spoke with one of the moms, and I have this update on the site right now if you want to get caught up. In fact, I'll just drop a link in the comments here for you. When this mom, her name is Desaria, and it was her son Xavion who brought this to her attention, And by the way, this 12-year-old kid emailed his teacher to say, I don't feel comfortable answering this question, which I'm not sure I would have had that kind of strength and courage as a 12-year-old kid. But when Desaria emailed the teacher and said, this is inappropriate, I don't like this, at first the teacher, who's named Mary Headington, said, okay, yeah, I didn't realize it would offend anyone. And I'll take it off of my next class sessions. And then so Desaria wrote back again and said, okay, great. I would like an apology. And I would like to know who approved this. And I would like, and basically said, this is ignorance and this is privilege. It is really privilege. From your place of privilege, you didn't know this would be offensive. Like, you must be really ignorant and really privileged to not realize how this could offend someone. And after that, the next response from the teacher was, actually, I'm going to leave it as it is. She didn't appreciate getting called out, I guess. And then within an hour after that, she was placed on leave. So not only did she not realize it, but when she was told, well, and what she said, when she said, I'm going to leave it, is because then we can have a good conversation tomorrow. You have a good conversation at the expense of those black kids, right? Those black kids are not your discussion piece, whatever. So that the fact is, like, the teacher just doubled down on it, which is wild to me. As Corey mentions, Corey Kopp in the comments mentions, the other piece of this is that this turns out to have come from a lesson plan that you could buy on this site called Teachers Pay Teachers, which apparently a lot of teachers know about. I did not know about this, but teachers do. It's a place where, like, you can put up your lesson plans that you use for other teachers to use, and you can sell them for a few bucks, or you can buy them for a few bucks. It doesn't seem like this one was bought there, because the one that I found that was actually on that site, it had a different format than this. But this question is word for word taken from a lesson that you could buy for $4 on Teachers Pay Teachers. And it must have been a wild day for Teachers Pay Teachers PR staff last night, because they called me at like 11 o'clock last night. Like, wow, you're working late. But what's funny is, it's not funny. This thing, this literal same question caused problems in Detroit just 2 months ago and in South Carolina last year. So this has been floating around TPT for a while. Like, this didn't just pop up there the other day. Yet, people like Corey reaching out to complain, people like us, like, I emailed the guy who wrote the lesson plan. I didn't hear back, surprisingly. But I also emailed TPT, as sort of their PR people. And that kind of thing makes stuff, and that kind of pressure makes stuff happen. And they called me last night to tell me that they had taken it off. They didn't fix it the first time because they didn't know about it, I don't think. I don't think anybody, even when those other incidents happened, I don't think anybody in the media, like, sought it out to find out where it came from. But Emily Hamer over at Wisconsin State Journal, kudos to Emily for figuring out where this came from. And then we were all able to, like, reach out to that company, who then took it off their site. So as you mentioned, Bernicia, there's an oversight problem on those sites. Who knows? There's thousands of lesson plans on there. Who knows what's in those? Who knows? So I wonder if this will prompt a bit more oversight on the site. So anyway, that's that. A couple of questions that remain outstanding for me and that I'm going to continue to work on are the question that came up a little bit earlier about how many teachers exactly. What do they plan to do? They talked about listening sessions. They talked about engaging of Black community leaders. Is that really going to happen? Often it doesn't. They talk about it and it never happens. So we'll see. if that happens. And then, if this teacher who, first of all, just did this, but then secondly doubled down on it, is that teacher going to remain employed? I mean, it's a question that we will continue to follow up on. All right. A few other things. And, it's worth noting also that this happened on the first day of Black History Month. Like, that just adds a layer of to it, right? Also on the website, Madison365.org today, Madison has a new police chief. His name is Dr. Sean Barnes. The local organization Blacks for Political and Social Action held a virtual welcome event where a lot of local Black leaders, Ruben Anthony from the Urban League, State Representative Sheila Stubbs, we'll hear more about her in a minute. Some other folks basically spoke publicly, but to Dr. Barnes to say, here's our expectations. Like, we're excited to have you here. They did the same thing with Dr. Carlton Jenkins, who took over as the state superintendent, or the superintendent of schools in Madison. Basically saying, we're glad you're here. But we understand that just because you're Black doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be with us all the time. And we expect you to listen. And we expect you to do what's right for the Black community here in Madison, which has had a fraught relationship with the police for a long, long time. Right? Over the past several years, you've had Tony Robinson shot killed. You had Janelle Laird arrested violently over at East Town Mall. You had a young man in a mental health crisis, they put a bag over his head and punched him in the face. You've had the school school officers and that whole controversy. But one thing that he said that I thought was interesting was that he sort of acknowledged, the quote was, there are employees of police departments here and around the nation who probably shouldn't be in law enforcement. Sort of to hear a chief of police acknowledge that some of these guys who are cops probably shouldn't be cops. We'll see if that changes anything. Producer's asking, no, they weren't. Freedom Inc., YWCA, Urban Triage were not involved in this welcome event. This was just Blacks for Political and Social Action, which is, I don't want to say old guard, but sort of it's Kirby Mack and David Hart. And if you know Madison, you know these names. Ruben Anthony, some other, Teresa Sanders, that kind of that crew. I don't think, I can't imagine Dr. Barnes would have any issue having such a session with Freedom Inc. or YWCA or Urban Triage in the future. This is the BP SA is what is organized this one. There is also a concern that the Civilian Oversight Board was not involved in this hire. Right, so there's already some friction there. So we'll see if that, what happens there. But we will. He just was sworn in yesterday. We are not known for going easy on police. So we'll have him on. We might have him on this show at some point. We'll make sure and hold him and everybody else in the police department accountable. It's a great question to get those organizations involved, and I'm certain that he'll be in touch with those organizations. I hope he is. We'll see. Also today in the news, over in Milwaukee, Summerfest is not going to be in the summer. Last year, you remember when pandemic was first hitting, Summerfest got moved to September and then canceled. It just got moved to September again. So fingers crossed that things happen, that the summer goes well, that vaccinations go well, and we can actually have Summerfest. Can you imagine how much fun that's going to be? To get back to go to Summerfest after a year and a half of this. So they've got that set for September. Fingers are crossed, and we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. Also today we have we don't do a lot of theater criticism, but when we do, it's pretty good. This is a screenshot from a play called The Niceties. You remember Forward Theater Company actually sponsored the update last week to promote this show. This mention is not paid for. This is just our reporter Malik Anderson actually saw the play and wrote a review. And what he came away with was that it's really interesting that those two actors are not in the same room. They actually produced this play with each of them acting independently, separately, and then they digitally put them together in that virtual room, which is quite remarkable, I think. And with the exception of the one character coming into the room sort of floating above the floor a little bit. But he said, other than that, it actually worked. It's a streaming experience. So you buy a ticket and then you can stream it once, anytime, between now and February 7th. He did say that it is cringeworthy in the best way. Basically, the story is white liberal professor, young black student, white liberal professor, a little bit racist, doesn't realize it. You know, those are it's a real thing. You know, we older white liberals can often stick our foot in our mouth. But Malik said the performances are excellent. The technology works for the most part, and it makes you go, makes you feel things. And there's also a talk back afterwards. So he has a couple quotes from that. So he, I think, basically came away with it with a recommendation that this is not paid for. And Forward Theater Company is not sponsor today's update and did not sponsor this review. This is an honest review. But he basically said you should see it. So tickets are available at forwardtheater.com. And finally today, it is Black History Month, and the Legislative Black Caucus, chaired by Madison's own Representative Sheila Stubbs, kicked off its Black History Month programming. And basically, really, they've done it for a while, but really, they've really ramped it up in the past 2-3 years, where they have Black History Month stuff every day, basically, for the whole month. So if you go to the site right now, we've got a story on this. They did this Zoom kickoff event yesterday with the governor and the lieutenant governor and Representative Stubbs. But we've got the whole calendar of everything, and it's like resume workshops, and it's history lessons, and it's, it's stuff every day for Black History Month, run by the Legislative Black Caucus, which is mostly Milwaukee. I mean, it wasn't long ago, it was all Milwaukee. Like, every black legislator was from Milwaukee. Now we've got two here in Madison, Sheila Stubbs and Samba Balda. And then you've got Julian, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't remember his last name, but the first Republican black senator, he's from La Crosse. And he's also a member of this caucus. So, but it's a good group, and it's a good bit of programming, and it's really worth your time to just look at that list of things every day and see what you might want to get in on. So give that a look. It's at Madison365.org right now. That is what I have for you today. Appreciate you sticking with me through that. I will be back tomorrow. And in the meantime, remember, we are a nonprofit community news outlet. We do a lot of work. It's the work we do is supported by you, by the community. We did in 2020, we had about a 500% increase in donations. As you know, in times of crisis, people come together and support each other. And the crisis in journalism and the difficulty in what we're trying to do right now has not gone away. So we continue to need support. Like I said, we're a nonprofit. We're legit 501c3 nonprofit. So any donation you make is tax deductible and goes directly into the work. And all this news that I bring every day. Every one of those stories that I mentioned today was written by a professional journalist, and we pay them, and we pay them okay for that. So appreciate your attention, Bernie. Well, I'm pretty much on here at 4:00 every day. Today I was a little bit late, about 4:10 today, but 4 p.m. tomorrow, right here on Facebook Live or on YouTube or Periscope, all three at once. So we will see you then. See you right back here tomorrow, 4:00. Have a wonderful night.
This is 365 Media.